All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking Ohio State on this fine Thursday at noon Eastern time. We've got Steve Hellwagon on the line. Steve joins us on a regular basis from Bucknuts. It's the 247 sports platform for Ohio State football, where he is the senior Big Ten writer. Steve, how you doing this fine day?
Doing great, Mark. What's going on?
Well, you know, it's the off season, and people that don't follow college football, that are friends and family of mine, they wonder what we talk about once the games are over. And it almost seems like there's more to talk about. Coaching changes, this transfer portal's going crazy, of course, recruiting, players moving on to the NFL draft, all of that. We'll focus on the recruiting end. A lot of guys who have signed with Ohio State or are hard commits playing in the All-American Bowl, the Under Armour All-American game as well here in the past week, and showing up rather well.
Yeah, no question about it. You had Garrett Wilson. He played in the All-American Bowl down at San Antonio. He had 2 touchdown catches in that game. They had several other guys in that game, several guys in the Under Armour game. And what's amazing is the Ohio State had an early enrollment date compared to some other colleges. They started class, I believe it was January 7th, a Monday there, 1 or 2 days right after that All-American Bowl. So guys were playing in the All-Star game and then probably that night flying to Columbus so that they could get enrolled in class the next day. So a very hectic time, and obviously the winter semester is now well underway. It's in its 3rd week at Ohio State right now, and obviously they put out that they'll start spring practice in early March, and their spring game will be April the 13th. So there is no rest for these guys. They've got 7 early enrollees at Ohio State, and it's some of their top prospects in this 2019 class, including Zach Harrison, the big-time defensive end from right here in Columbus at Orange High School, Garrett Wilson, who we talked about, Marcus Crowley from Jacksonville, Florida. He was a Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Florida as a running back. Ronnie Hickman, a safety from Wayne, New Jersey. And then 2 guys from Mentor High School in the Cleveland area, Ryan Jacoby. He's an offensive lineman. And Noah Potter, he's a defensive end. Those 2 guys also enrolled early at Ohio State. So those guys will be going through spring practice, and sometimes that can cut both ways. It gives those freshmen a chance to get to know the coaches and also earn a spot in the 2 deep perhaps. But the thing that also kind of cuts is you have high school athletes out there basically competing against grown men and college kids. And there's been a propensity sometimes for some of these younger kids to get hurt in full contact drills during the spring when they enroll a little bit early. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys mix in as they get into spring football coming up really within about another 5 or 6 weeks. They'll be getting the helmets and the shoulder pads back out at Ohio State.
Yeah, people that don't follow college football figure these guys hit the practice field a few weeks before the first game and then play the 12 games and then a bowl game and then that's it. But obviously football, even into the high school and junior high ranks, is becoming a full-time job for these guys that want to pursue it to that degree. Of course, Steve works for 247 Sports. That's the standard when it comes to college football, high school football recruiting as these kids prepare for college. And I notice a couple of Buckeyes that have signed letters of intent. Harry Miller, highly regarded center, and also Jamison Williams. These guys are really vaulting in the rankings. And I think you guys just released your final player rankings, and these guys took a good 15 to 25 spot leap.
Yeah, a couple of the guys in the class moved up. A couple of them, Zach Harrison in particular, he moved down probably 15 or 20 spots. And again, I think it's interesting to note, this is strictly what the 24/7 sports experts led by Barton Simmons, Steve Wiltfong, and several others, what they've seen with these guys. And the way that they like to say this, if you're a 5-star guy on their list, they view you in 3 or 4 years as a potential NFL first-round draft pick. So even though Harrison may have moved down a little bit, Garrett Wilson is like 29 or 28 on their list, they still view those guys as first-round NFL draft picks. They're 5-star prospects. So I don't think it's anything to get too excited about one way or the other. I think we have seen cases in the past, obviously, of five-star guys who just for whatever reason never worked out. And we've also seen three-star guys who become All-Americans and go on to NFL careers. So I think it's kind of like the stock market. Past performance is no indication of what future returns will be, but it is what it is. They say at 24/7 Sports, they take into account, you go back to last summer, you have the opening, the big camp they have out at Nike in July, the opening, the Elite 11 for quarterbacks, how you performed on the field as a senior, the caliber of your competition, the caliber of the guys that you're playing with, everything that happens, I guess, during your high school career, as well as for these guys, basically the top 100 are all, give or take, all selected to appear in one of the two major all-star games. And they have people at both those games watching practices, watching the demeanor. And I made a comment to somebody last night. I was like, if it's an equal competition between, two five-star guys, and I have a chance to get to know these guys, I am going to upvote. I am going to rate the people who are stronger citizens, let's just say, ahead of guys who maybe put off bad signals or a little sketchy in those all-star situations, have those prima donna, tendencies. So that's just my personal preference, because I think you're going to go a lot farther with the guys who are solid citizens and take care of their business than you are with somebody who's always, shaking their head or got their hand out or wondering, what are you all doing for me today or whatever. So I think that there is a component to that is definitely worthwhile. But, come back all the way around the bend. Ohio State's got a very good class for 2019. Mark, we crunched the numbers. I did an entire scholarship breakdown the last 2 days on Ohio State's offense and their defense. And we found when we added it up, they were at 85 scholarships if they're able to hold on to West Virginia standout Doug Nestor. He is committed to Ohio State but did not sign with the Buckeyes. He's from Spring Valley High School, which is, I believe, near Charleston, West Virginia, I believe. And he made an official visit to Ohio State last weekend. The coaching change had him a little bit concerned about what was going to happen with Greg Studrawa, his offensive line coach. But Studrawa has been retained at Ohio State. So he took an official visit to Ohio State last weekend. He's going to see Penn State this coming weekend, and then Virginia Tech on February the 2nd. We hear that his home state school, West Virginia, with their new staff, has also reached out to him as well in trying to put together an attractive package to get him to look at West Virginia a little bit as well. So it sounds like there could be suspense on signing day as to whether or not, which would be the second signing day, February the 6th, whether or not Ohio State will be holding on to Doug Nestor. He is ranked as the nation's 106 prospect, just outside the top 100, but would be a difference maker, no question. When we did that breakdown of the scholarship spots, Ohio State only had 12 offensive linemen on scholarship. I think he would make 13 if he sticks with Ohio State. And the Buckeyes have honestly had a couple more offensive linemen, one in for a visit this past week. This guy, DeWand Jones from Indianapolis, Ben Davis High School, 6'8", 360 pounds. He sounds like an offensive tackle to me, Mark. I don't know. He was at Ohio State last weekend. He's going to go to Penn State this weekend. He's also visited USC, so it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, if he ends up signing with Ohio State. And then one more guy who'll be in this weekend from the Aloha State. He's from, I got to pronounce this right, Kahuka. I think it's Kahuka, Hawaii is his hometown. Enoch, E-N-O-K-K, Vimahi, V-I-M-A-H-I, ranked as the nation's number 124 prospect. He's made visits already to Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and USC, which USC may have the inside track on him. He's going to visit Ohio State this weekend. And what a great weekend for a guy from Hawaii to come to Ohio State when The wind chills are going to be probably about 20 degrees. And we had about 3 inches of snow on the ground. It melted. It was 50 degrees here yesterday. It rained, and now it's back down in the 20s, and we've got an inch of snow back on the ground already today. So the weather in Ohio is crazy, and you just wonder what a kid from Hawaii is going to think when he comes all the way, probably 10 hours by flight or more, to Columbus, Ohio, to see what Ohio State is all about. But Ryan Day and his staff, and Greg Studarawa, and Mike Yursich, the new offensive coordinator, Kevin Wilson, the co-coordinator, they will put all of their emphasis on Enoch Vamahi from Kahuku, I think that's pronounced right, Kahuku, Hawaii, nation's number 124 prospect overall. And they are making a complete emphasis to rebuild depth on that offensive line, as we talked about. They did have one more development this past week. They got Jacob James, a 2020 prospect from Cincinnati Elder High School down in Cincinnati, a couple hours away. And to me, I think Ryan Day is trying to get back to where Ohio State puts that fence up around the state of Ohio and gets a lot of the top guys from the state to end up at Ohio State.
Steve, I've often felt and thought that those coaches, those big recruiters from Big Ten country in particular, and some of the other schools, let's say in the ACC, Boston College and others, have to just be hoping and praying and hitting their knees the night before that they bring in some of these recruits from the South or California, and just hoping. They know that they're not going to get 72 degrees in the middle of January or February, but hey, give us 40 degrees and some sun, and we'll try to get them in the buildings quickly.
Yeah, I know. They're now letting guys take official visits, I think, in the spring of their junior year, which they can come in for a spring game weekend, which is usually good weather, middle of April in Ohio. For years, it's obviously been predominantly last weekend in November for the Michigan game, which can be hit or miss. Some years it's in the 50s and some years it's in the 30s. And then December and January typically are the worst 2 months weather-wise here in central Ohio. We don't quite get the lake effect snow that Cleveland gets. They may get 6 or 8 inches, and we might get a dusting sometimes. But the weather is obviously not conducive to bring in players from all over the country to visit at Ohio State. But the calendar is what it is, and if kids are serious about playing college football at the highest level, then they give places like Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State up here in the Rust Belt a look, I suppose, because you can get to a playoff, you can get to the NFL from all those places just as easily.
Absolutely. It just doesn't seem like it affects Ohio State recruiting. So regardless of when they bring them in, and I know that Big Ten coaches have pushed for those later dates, some of those May recruiting visits and recruiting weekends, but it certainly has not affected Urban Meyer in particular, and before him, Jim Tressel, in bringing in the top talent in the country. And I think I noted something that I came across a few weeks ago when we were talking recruiting and Urban Meyer's prowess, that he was able to bring in more top 300 players from the state of Florida in his last 4 or 5 years than Florida State, and Miami combined.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know when we did that breakdown, I looked at state by state, the makeup of this team. 85 guys, 31 of them are from the state of Ohio, so 37%, which in Tressel's time, he would generally take 50-50. It would be, if he had a class of 20 guys, 10 of them would invariably be from Ohio, give or take, and 10 of them would be from out of state. Ohio State has 9 guys from the state of Florida on scholarship. They also have guys, several from states like Texas, Georgia. Maryland is also another popular one right now. So those are all states. Michigan has been in years past, but as of right now, I think they're down to only 1 guy from the state of Michigan on their roster. So perhaps that has something to do with, perhaps Jim Harbaugh is starting to find a way to keep some of the best players in Michigan back there at home. But it is interesting. I think they have guys from 15 or 16 different states in places like the state of Washington, They have Brandon Bowen, I believe, is from Utah. They've got guys from all over the map, basically. They'll have guys from Arizona coming in. Haskell Garrett and Tate Martell is not there anymore. They were both from Nevada, which is very rare as well. So, I think it remains to be seen with Ryan Day. I don't think you're going to get back to 50-50 like you have with Tressel, but my guess it'll be a happy medium between what Urban Meyer was doing in the 30% range and what Tressel was doing closer to 50%. It'll probably be in that 40% range for guys from the state of Ohio. And Ryan Day in recent weeks has been spotted at several of what we here consider to be the best talent producing high schools in the state of Ohio. Dublin Kaufman is one of them right here in Columbus. Pickerington Central is another one. A lot of guys have come out of Pickerington Central and Pickerington North talking about, Elfline and Taco Charlton and any number of guys, the Bourne brothers who played at Ohio State. A lot of guys that are now playing at Michigan State and Kentucky and all these other places have come through that one suburb here in Columbus, and Ryan Day has made sure to get out there and press the flesh. Cincinnati and their Catholic schools, Moeller, Elder, St. X, have a deep tradition of producing guys who are playing at Penn State, Notre Dame, Kentucky, Ohio State in the past in different places. And as we mentioned, Jacob James from Elder High School is committed now for 2020. The Buckeyes have a commitment as well from a kid from St. X High School, St. Xavier. Also, Paris Johnson for next year, 2020 prospect. National top 10 kid, offensive lineman, and they'll be fighting until next December when it's time for him to sign. They'll be fighting everybody off to maintain him. I know Penn State and Notre Dame and other schools are going to be coming in for Paris Johnson, no question about it.
We're on the line with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts. You can join him right there for the best in Ohio State football coverage, the 247 Sports platform for Ohio State. And he is senior Big Ten writer right there. Steve, I made a number of notes. You hit on so many things and some really good stuff there. You made the character argument in regards to evaluating these players, and just think about it. Not to pick on Randy Moss, but he's the first guy that came to mind as a guy that had some issues in his collegiate career, moved on to 3 different universities, and obviously it turned out for him, he's one of the greatest of all time. But if you got a guy that's here in talent and you're grading somebody else here, and this guy has a track record of issues, well, depending on which way he goes, he could maintain that talent edge, or if he busts, then he goes from 100 to 0, where the other guy, you got the character in play and it's pretty much locked down, and then he may not become quite the player, but at least you got a serviceable impact player on your team. So it's obviously a hit or miss situation with some of these guys.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think it's a reliability issue as well. I think that you're looking for guys who can fit into a system, mesh into a team format. Your team is together, and I joke about this all the time, 56 weeks a year, basically. I mean, you think about the off time for these guys in between semesters. They played in the bowl game on January 1st, and school began on January the 7th. And these are guys that got to go home for 5 days at Christmas time. They were practicing for the Michigan game on Thanksgiving Day. I mean, there is very, very little downtime when you are a Division I athlete like you are at Ohio State. It is literally year-round commitment. They'll have spring break for a week coming up. It's unique what they do because of their academic calendar. The semester for the winter semester is over April 30th. Done with exams. There's nothing in the month of May pertaining to the winter semester. They have a truncated, what they call May semester, where you can stack up on some hours and in a 4-week period gain a whole semester's worth of a class or 2, which are obviously longer class times in those 4 weeks. But the gist of it is that a lot of the athletes will stay in Columbus for that period and continue working out, take a week off, and come back and go through class and workouts for summer semester, which begins about the second week of June. So, and then from there, they get a week off right before the start of preseason camp in August. And as we said, it's all the way through till you get 5 days off at Christmas, 5 days off after your bowl game, and you start right back in on it. So what did I tell you right there? That they might get the equivalent of a month away from campus in the time of an entire year. And it's not much. And it's broken up into 5 days here, 7 days here. And it's that commitment level that you're looking for. And these kids, I think some of them go into it and they don't understand that commitment level coming from the high school level. I think it depends on the structure a lot of times and the level of caliber of competition of their high school. Some of the places we talked about, St. X, Elder, they have programs in place like this where you show up at school at 5 in the morning and lift weights and then go to class. Or after school or whatever it may be. And those kids probably have a better appreciation of what they're getting into at Ohio State than maybe some kids who are kind of the diamond in the rough kids who don't have that type of a program structure in place at some of their schools. It's hard to say, but kids are coming from all walks of life. And again, what you're looking for are people that will be there in the 13th month when it's time, when a championship is on the line, 14th game, fourth quarter, are we going to win this game to get to the championship game, or are we just going to go play in an also-ran bowl somewhere or whatever? So I think that special breed of cat is what they're looking for. Guys who have goals in mind to get their education, to play professionally, to be part of a team framework, to be part of a brotherhood that will last them a lifetime. That's what coaches at Michigan, at Ohio State, Notre Dame, all these places are looking for. That guy who's going to have that level of buy-in to make his teammates look great, and in turn enjoy some of the largesse that comes with that. Because Urban Meyer says it a lot. Be sure that you're using the system and the system is not using you. That's what he kind of imparts to his players a lot of the time. And they have to avail themselves of everything that's out there in terms of class scheduling and tutoring and help and whatever else they can get, preparation for life after football, all that. He talks about it all the time. And I think the guys who are leaving Ohio State, you have guys like Terry McLaurin. He graduated from Ohio State in 3.5 years. He has a list of accomplishments a mile long that when he goes into interviews at the Senior Bowl with the Patriots, the Packers, the Bengals, the Browns, whoever it may be, his hometown team, the Colts, said he'd love to play for them, and Andrew Luck, he can tell them, these are the things I've accomplished. This is the stuff I did on the field. This is the stuff I did off the field, and it's prepared him for that moment.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Urban Meyer has certainly talked, especially more so in recent years, but he admits to have learned a lot from his previous coaching stints, especially at Florida, and he takes great pride, better than I do, takes great pride in the structure there at the Ohio State University in preparing these kids for adult life, if they are willing to buy in and take advantage of everything that's given them. But he believes that they have as great a structure that's being copied across the country to prepare these kids for life.
Yeah, he came about this because his two daughters were college volleyball players, and his son is now playing baseball at Cincinnati. I know one of the daughters played at Georgia Tech. I'm not sure if the other one played at Florida or at another college, but at any rate, they went through the recruiting process with each of their kids. And as part of that, as a parent, he realized the shortcomings that he as a football coach wasn't meeting the needs of his own athletes in his football program. So it was like we were all geared around getting them a degree and shoving them out the door is kind of like an assembly line. Next, give me the next batch, the next wave, get them their degrees, send them either off NFL or get their degree and shove them out the door and bring the next one in. He said took more of a holistic approach to it, that you have to take these kids, some of them from backgrounds where maybe they don't have all of this information, explain to them that when you talk to people, you look them in the eye. This is how you interview. This is what you wear. This is where you go. This is what you put on a resume. This is the thing that you do to build your resume. These are the people you need to see to get counseling about what your field will be like. A lot of these guys want to go into, as he says, they want to major in business. Well, they get to Ohio State, they don't even understand what that really means, that there's so many different facets to that college and different career paths that they can put people on. So, I think that his Real Life Wednesday program is the thing that he really came up with that has knocked it out of the park. Ohio, Columbus is, I want to say, number 30 in terms of television markets, but the city proper is probably the 10th or 15th largest city in the country. It doesn't have the suburban support that maybe Cleveland or some of the larger metro markets have, but there are major employers right here in Columbus who are dying, first, to find great people, and second, to be part of something at Ohio State. You think the CEO at Nationwide Insurance isn't excited to say, I was hanging out with Urban and the team the other day, and I was showing them this, and they were saying, oh my goodness, that. And, so they've built that kind of kinship, I suppose, with local businesses. And as he said, colleges around the country have taken note of it and going to use the built-in advantages that they have in different parts of the country to provide a similar service for their athletes. And again, this is the year 2019. There's so much out there about student athlete welfare and helping these kids, transcend and make a leap within, it's not just entertain everybody on television every Saturday. It's get something truly tangible out of this, a college degree and a conduit to something that can set you up for life. And I think that's what he's trying to accomplish.
Steve, something you said, I've got a list of things because you've covered a lot of good ground here. When you mention Nestor being the one guy out there that's made the commitment to Ohio State, has yet to sign, I think a lot of Ohio State fans would consider and think, what is this guy waiting for, and what's the decision to be made? Because they're just thinking football, and they're thinking Ohio State versus West Virginia or Virginia Tech. This is not Alabama or Clemson where, wow, where do I go from a football standpoint? They're thinking, what decision is there to be made? There's no comparison between the status of these programs, but obviously he's thinking this through, and there are other components to life off of the football field.
Yeah, I know Penn State is also pushing Doug Nestor very hard. In fact, I want to say that there was an interview one of the people on our website did with his high school coach at Spring Valley High School, that when Doug got back from Ohio State on Sunday night, that an assistant from Penn State was right there on his doorstep, to counter, for lack of a better term, what they tell you. What are they saying? Oh, really? We can do this for you. We can do that for you. We know that James Franklin has prioritized this kid, Doug Nestor, as a guy that they want to help them on the offensive line. So this is going to be a vintage battle to the death here. Doug Nestor's situation, and I agree with you. We see that a lot with even when Tate Martell left. I think there was part of the fan base that was, well, thank you for everything that you did for Ohio State. You were there as the backup quarterback this past year, and we, Ohio State, had such a great year, and you were part of it. Urban Meyer even referred to him earlier in the year as an elite warrior, a guy that, practiced hard and did everything he was supposed to do in the workouts and everything else. There were other people that were like, oh, don't let the door hit you in the behind on your way out. We'll win without you. I thought you were going to fight for the job. So, in my line of work, Mark, it takes all kinds. It's kind of my thought. It gives you a headache sometimes when you see some of the uninformed comments that people make. And and this is another example of, what is the decision between Ohio State, Penn State, Virginia Tech, West Virginia? One school wins the Big Ten 3 out of every 4 years and has been to the playoff, and other schools don't. I think there was a tie-in with somebody who's familiar with Doug and Virginia Tech. So, those personal, whether it was a staff member or whatever it was, sometimes those interpersonal relationships are just as important as anything else. West Virginia is his home state school. If he's from Charleston area, I believe, he's probably an hour and a half to Morgantown. He's just under 3 hours to Columbus. So geography. At Ohio State, you're just going to be one number out of 85 or one number out of 55,000 students. At West Virginia, you are the best football prospect we've had on our team, other than Will Greer, I suppose. But you'll be the big man on campus. You'll probably start from day one on the offensive line. John Cooper and Jim Tressel. I've been covering this long enough. They said you can never promise somebody that they're going to have playing time, and I'm certain they learned that, because at some point they may have actually done that and then realized that when they got the guy on campus and on the field that it wasn't going to work out. It wasn't a proper fit. But you can promise them an opportunity that you're going to get every chance to play as a freshman. At Ohio State, if we're calling him a tackle, I suppose there's one open tackle spot right now. You've got a couple guys who may have an inside track to it, but is he legitimately going to start as a freshman at Ohio State, barring an injury or two? Probably not. But at the same time, look at Ohio State's track record. Everybody who starts 2 and 3 years at Ohio State generally ends up in the NFL, or at least gets drafted, or at least signs an undrafted free agent contract and gets a look in camp. They've had guys. There was a guy years ago, Alex Boone, who was a high school All-American, had some issues when he was at Ohio State with some off-the-field things. Played 3 years. I think he may have even stayed for his 4th year, passed up a chance to go pro. For whatever reason, he went undrafted. But then he played like 8 years for the San Francisco 49ers. So, and I think, Ohio State, you could swap out the name of the college. They've got success stories just like that anywhere else. But at Ohio State, you have that opportunity. If you earn a starting spot, the NFL is going to know your name. And you're going to be invited. They've had some marginal guys in years past who I didn't think were going to get drafted, but were still invited to the combine just because they were Ohio State guys. And so this year they had 6 guys leave early. They've got a handful of seniors who left as well. They could have 8, 10, 12 guys at the combine again this year. And when you do that year after year after year after year, and high school kids take note of this and say, this is a conduit, this is a pipeline for me to get to the NFL.
John Simon comes to mind based on our conversation last week before the AFC Championship game, and some other comments that you made right here, including who's going to be that guy that's going to be fighting when he's tired and banged up and hurting when it's 5 minutes left to play against Michigan and you're down by a touchdown. And John Simon embodies that. Also an adage that, again, I defer to you because you know so much more about Ohio State football and the happenings from day to day. But Jim Tressel would say, if anything, I would lean toward the Ohio guy because I just felt as though he probably would fight for his state school, not to discount all the talent that they had from out of state, including Terrell Pryor at the top of the list that did an exceptional job at Ohio State, and not saying that they didn't fight and play 100%. But there was just that philosophy that maybe the Ohio guy fights a little bit more for it. We talked about John Simon last week. We mentioned him, and lo and behold, he comes up with a big play in the AFC Championship game. I think he had a sack early in that game, and I thought, Steve and I just talked about him.
Yeah, I think this is something that's come up in the last couple of years. Last year, they had 2 losses, lost at home to Oklahoma. No disgrace in that. They were the Big 12 champion. Ohio State had won on Oklahoma's field the year before. So, 2 great programs head-to-head. Anything can happen. But the way that they lost the second game at Iowa was a disqualifying factor, I think, when it came time for them to be considered for the playoff. This year, all things being equal, you could say Oklahoma had a better loss to Texas early in the season and avenged that loss later in the year. I didn't have a problem that they put Oklahoma into the playoff and that Ohio State losing at Purdue 49-20, the way that they lost, again, was a disqualifying factor. What are the mitigating circumstances of those two losses? Is it endemic of the fact that you have guys from all across the country wearing this Ohio State uniform that may or may not have that buy-in, that in a blowout situation they don't, maybe you still get in the playoff. I don't know. You at least have a better case. So it was the margin and the feel of those two losses cost them 2 playoff berths, basically. And some people in these parts have tracked it back to the number of out-of-state players and not having the proper buy-in. Not enough Ohio guys. But here's the trade-off. If I'm not taking out-of-state guys who are national top 100 guys, am I even in that position to be considered for a playoff? If I don't have KJ Hill from Arkansas and J.K. Dobbins from Texas and Chase Young, from Maryland and all these other guys, am I even in position for a playoff berth? So it's an argument that's going to rage on. I think a happy medium is what I think everybody would love. And, it is what it is. But the joke that we make is, hey, we don't care where you're from. As long as they continue to beat Michigan, everything's okay.
Yeah, I liken it to a certain extent to the criticism thrown at the great Dallas Cowboys coach Tom Landry, in that he built a system in Dallas that ensured, basically because of his genius, that he had this system and structure in place that just spit out playoff contenders and Super Bowl contenders, I should say, that played in 5 Super Bowls and all just went to championship games like it was nothing. Actually, Bill Belichick just broke his NFL record for NFC or conference championship games played in. But the criticism was maybe they got to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship game, and while the other team was fighting like it was the end of the world, his team was just going out there like it was just another game, because that's what they did. They were businesslike, and that built consistent excellence, but maybe they didn't quite push a few through.
Yeah, I know at Ohio State they talk about competitive excellence, and they build these championship teams in the spring, the summer, and certainly in the fall, because it is the best of the best going against each other in practice. And, I think what we saw over the course of the season was Ohio State's defense by the end of the year was marginally better, somewhat improved. I think you could take that Maryland game and tear it in half and throw both halves away, 51 points. They gave up in a winning effort, but otherwise, there were at least some better signs that by the end of the year that going against Ohio State's offense and the offenses that they were playing against had improved them a little bit. I think Ohio State fans are excited to see what new direction they're going to go with this new staff. And obviously you have as many as 9 guys. My tally when I did it yesterday, Mark, was 4 guys who we would traditionally say on offense are returning starters, plus KJ Hill, who was rarely listed as a starter but was a leading receiver the last 2 years, and Brandon Bowen, who was a starter in 2017 but didn't play in 2018. So you have as many as 6 guys on that side of the ball with starting experience and 9 on defense with starting experience. And the 2 guys you lose both went pro early. It was Kendall Sheffield at corner and Draymond Jones at defensive tackle. Everybody else is back, and you just hope between the new staff and the experience that those guys had, the lessons that they learned, that it'll be a much better situation. And again, as I said, going against the best every day in practice is what they kind of bill as the one of the secrets to their success.
And one of the oddest resumes in college football from last season was the Maryland Terps, who beat Texas and came within a catch in the end zone of beating Ohio State. So they, in fact, could have beaten 2 of the top 7 or 8 teams in the country, but couldn't make a bowl game. So They hit a high ceiling, a lot of speed, and we'll see what Michael Locksley can do there in College Park. Steve, you've been extremely gracious with your time. We appreciate you stopping by. Of course, join Steve and the rest of the staff at Bucknuts 247 Sports, and we'll have Steve back as soon as we possibly can. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by, sir.
All right, Mark, take care.